Hello, and welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of dailydead.com. I'm your co-host, Bryan Christopher, and we have got a full house with us tonight. We've got Jonathan James, we've got Scott Drebit, we've got Tamika Jones, and we've got Derek Anderson. And we are talking Alien Romulus. This, I think, is the perfect topic to get the band back together on because it has been, I actually should have looked it up. How long has it been since we recorded an episode? We're talking months, right?
It feels like days.
So the, the last episode was I was talking with Heather and Patrick about their book In Search of Darkness, which just so happened to be the 300th episode. So
Yeah, which we accidentally made it. Yeah.
I swooped in and I took the 300th episode, but it was for a good cause though, to celebrate this amazing thing that Heather and Patrick had done. But now I feel good. I feel like this is like the celebration just continues here.
Or it's starting over, right? It's starting over. Here's to another 300 of interesting, fascinating. We got time. Where are you going? What do you got going on? We have time.
I'll be dust, as you like to say.
There's now like one of those Home Depot skeletons where Jonathan was sitting just
here's
a minute
to
ago.
here's to another 30 First Club episode. That doesn't sound right.
Which will be spread out over the next 3 decades. We'll do one a year. No, actually, more on that when we get to the end of the episode. But
he just called me a moron. More on that, Scott.
I feel like it has been too long. Like Scott is just like chomping at the bit. He's so excited.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I am too.
Before we get started here, though, I'd say like there's something that's like peeking behind your head, Bryan, that wasn't completely visible before.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a little green.
Oh no, it's just my background. Just my background.
Yeah, what is that behind you?
What's
Nothing-
that movie?
nothing
Oh, no,
wrong
it's
about
just I typed in alien movie wallpaper, and that was
It's
the
a
first
very
one that came up.
recognizable poster.
Yeah,
Did
no,
you
it's a good one.
You must have typed in best alien movie
Yeah,
backdrop.
yeah. No, I
It's
think
Resurrection, folks. It's
most
Resurrection.
most imaginative alien. Which Jonathan. Anyone who is a longtime listener of Corpse Club knows that Jonathan has a couple of issues with Alien Resurrection. We won't get into those because I don't think they're going to be at all relevant for this discussion.
Not at all.
But I'm pumped.
But speaking of this discussion, if you are watching and you haven't seen Alien Romulus and you don't want to have it spoiled, maybe hold off. I don't want to lose streamers, but I also don't. We are going to get into the nitty gritty of this movie, and we will be talking about the ending, as you might have guessed. So if you are listening to this or you're watching now, you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your fair warning because we will be getting deep into spoiler territory on this.
And I will say, if I might, that while we are going into spoiler territory, you can really listen because most of the things that you think would happen between 1 and 2 do happen in this movie. Things that you can think of do actually occur. So I don't think you're going to be like completely thrown off if you wanted to go along with us. That's just a way to say it's like really, really derivative in parts.
Certain parts.
All right, let's get going. I'm
Okay,
pumped.
thanks, Scott.
So,
Usually,
There.
so just to be clear, I can like let all of my thoughts out then all at once.
No,
not
don't
one
fire
sentence. No,
her.
Derek.
Everybody's
give
like,
anything
no.
away.
No,
I didn't give
absolutely
anything
not.
away.
Absolutely
I was
not.
just tiptoeing around the fact that yes, we are going to get spoilery. I don't know if it's so spoilery if you're ensconced in the alien world. A lot of the things that I thought were going to happen to these people did happen. That's all I was saying.
Gotcha.
Fair enough.
Gotcha. And for those who are unfamiliar, well, I'm guessing the people who will be listening to this at this point are familiar. But just a recap: Alien Romulus is the newest entry in the Alien franchise from one Mr. Fede Alvarez, who also wrote along with directing, with co-writer Rodo Ciegues. And it takes place, yeah, in between, like, what was it, 57 years of the first and second Aliens. And yeah, we join up with a group of colonists who are they are the people that are kind of usually only referenced in a lot of the other stuff that's going on in Alien. Like, these are the people who are the downtrodden under the thumb of Weyland-Yutani. They are working on a like a work colony. The main character is Rain, played by Kaylee Spaney. She is an orphan minor who, when we join, is finding out that her, like, I think 4-year contract has been just promptly extended by another 4 years, and you get the sense that they're just going to keep on doing that. So she is stuck with her brother, quote unquote, Andy, played by David Johnson, who is taking on the synthetic role for the movie. And they get an opportunity from a group of their old friends, Tyler, Kay, Bjorn, and Navarro. They are planning on something of a heist. They want to get to another system. To do that, you need to have cryopods, and they have happened to stumble upon a floating, like a kind of a ghost ship space station that they think they can get some cryopods off of. Little do they know, this was a space station that had been collecting the xenomorph material from the Nostromo an undetermined number of years ago. So things might go awry a little bit. So I'm interested. I feel like we are going back to basics a little bit with this one, in terms of, it is a sparse cast. It is kind of a small crew. It is going for kind of like a lot more of the, like, one-on-one cat and mouse suspense, with maybe, I think, maybe a little bit more on steroids. But what do people think about the new group? What do we think about our group of kind of our motley crew here?
I'll take it. I'll say I like the intro, and not that I don't like other parts, but I like the intro. I do like some of the setup, because there is this kind of back and forth, especially as you get to like Alien 3 and maybe more of even the assembly cut. But that, like, and I've often questioned too, like, is Weyland-Yutani like really all that bad? Like, Burke is clearly bad, right? Because he's killing people. He's, gonna take this and make money off of it. But we don't know, like, through and through, that everybody, and we kind of get a sense too in the first one, that the crew is expendable, but we don't know that, like, as an overall corporation, they suck. Here we see that, yes, through and through, like, Ripley's right, like, everybody's right. Like, you do not want to trust these people. And I think it shows that, from the fact that they have all of these people working in the mines, when clearly there are other things that they could be doing. They could be leveraging androids. They could be using other stuff. But they are using, humans and working them to death. You also have them, essentially conning people out of even being able to leave the planet. You see how, Rain's number all of a sudden changes. And you see that it's not really a great place to live, even outside of that, where we do see Andy getting picked on. And I thought that they did, in an incredibly kind of short period of time, they made you feel bad for Rain. They made you want to punch the kids that were picking on Andy. And they kind of set this world up. By the time then you meet the other kids, and they're like, we have this heist, you already kind of understand at least where Rain and Andy are coming from. I think some of the other characters weren't as fleshed out as well, but I also would say that this is following more, slasher, more of a slasher script, and you don't really flesh out all your characters there. We might be used to seeing in other films, but I mean, even the original Alien was more of like a haunted house or slasher in space. So I think this did a good job of kind of setting that piece up.
I would agree. I think the only place where they get a little heavy-handed in the setup is when they literally have the canary going into the coal mine. Like, I get that this is an evil corporation, but I think they probably could have come up with a better system at this point than an actual bird.
Well, not only
But
that, but not only that, but the symbolism, my eyes just rolled into the back of my head as she's getting these years added onto her sentence. You
yeah,
see the
yeah,
canary go by, and I'm like,
yeah. No,
oh,
You
I
know,
mean, I don't
my
think.
my only thing though is like we've gone through Alien versus Predator
I
Requiem,
know.
right? We've had the ups and downs of Prometheus and Covenant, and so like I some of these things for me, I mean it's legit, but I'm like, what we get in the intro is so much better than what we've gotten in years. I'm just
Oh,
like,
absolutely. No,
Yes,
that's a
yeah,
minor quibble.
yes,
It's something
yeah.
I'll
yeah.
like chuckle about, but like, no, I am not like using that as like a really bad like knock against the movie.
No, no, I know.
Yeah.
Uh, Tamika, what are your thoughts on the on our opening here and our introduction to the characters?
I actually really enjoy these characters. Um, Also, I just want to say, like, there is like a what seems like a tornado going on outside. So I'm very sorry. I hope I hope you guys can't hear any of
Well, we
that.
can't hear it, but
No,
you
we
stay
can't.
safe, and
Yeah,
you got
we care
Okay.
a
more about
disconnect or
you
whatever.
in
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, good, good. Okay, I'm glad you guys can't hear it. I'm just gonna ignore it. I really, I don't think it's been since maybe Aliens that I really enjoy the characters. Like, I agree with Jonathan, like, not all of them are fleshed out, but I'm okay with that because not all of them need to be, because not everyone, like, is going to be super interesting. So I'm completely fine with that. Like, I'm fine. I'm more than fine actually, because I agree. Like, when you sit through like the AVP movies and like Alien Cubed, it's like, oh, this is I or Prometheus. Like, I can get behind this. I'm fine with it. But I can't help but ask myself if it's maybe because I don't know about you guys, but I saw a lot of a connection to like Blade Runner. Like, I love that movie
Hmm.
so much, and I don't mean to always bring that up in every conversation, but just like the mining colony and then like brains number, like, except for in this case, they're actual humans and not replicants. Although I hope that's not a spoiler. No, that's not
No,
a
no,
spoiler.
and we can spoil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Blade
We,
Runner
we
spoilers too. We can spoil
Okay.
everything
What?
in this
yeah,
podcast.
we're
What?
spoiling every sci-fi
I was
franchise.
saving Blade Runner for this weekend.
You know,
No.
the funny thing about that, Tamika, is that Ridley Scott did bridge the Prometheus world in Blade Runner. So there may have been some intentionality in that. And if I recall correctly, they had they had the androids in Blade Runner on mining colonies
Mhm.
to support the humans. So there still was
Right.
the element of they weren't replacing them. There were still
True.
humans
That
that
is
were actually
true.
mining even there.
Right. That
And then
is
we do
true.
have Wicked Kitten who is laughing in the comments at 40-year-old spoilers. Yeah,
Yeah, 40-year-old
we're good. Yeah,
spoilers.
we're good. And also mentioned about that we need killable characters, which we do.
Absolutely.
And
And
any
we
good
have them.
Good
slasher
point.
does. Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
yeah.
Bjorn.
I don't know what you coughed. You cut out. What did you say?
Oh, Bjorn.
Oh,
I
yeah.
coughed Bjorn because
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
a fan. Derek, how about you? What do you think about our new group?
Well, yeah, just talking about the group, I'll try not to go too much into the plot at this point, but
Just
Don't
don't take
fire
us to the
hose.
Romulus yet. Don't take us into the Romulus.
You see how we're doing it, Derek? Bit by bit. Bit
yes,
by
let me
bit.
let me
You
start
just see
my
him do like the
20
full breaths. It's like
Fire hose.
Well, for my first of 20 points on this, no. But no, I like the immediacy. I like that there's like an urgency to these characters. Like they live in a world where their parents dying and them having to fend for themselves is just kind of a normal thing. And it's like, oh, hey, sorry that your dad died, and they're like, yeah, there's just like a disease every single year that's just wiping people out. So I like that there's like real stakes right away where it feels a little more grounded in that sense. And then I just feel like Fede and his co-writer Roto, like they've done a really good job of this throughout their careers, whether it was like the Evil Dead 2013 film where you're dealing with like drug addiction, or Don't Breathe where you have kind of a
Turkey
similar, like they're
basters.
doing yeah, well,
Oh God.
yeah. Never forget the turkey baster. But their characters just they're going through stuff like before the shit even hits the fan later in the movie. So I do like how this is a little more like the characters already have like they're not just exploring, they're not on some like scientific expedition to do research for some super expensive like pharmaceutical job that they have. Like they're just like trying to survive, and then they see this as an opportunity. So I really like that part of it. I think it feels like different than what you might expect.
Right. And Scott, I know there was a little bit of the eye rolling when it comes to, a little bit of the heavy-handedness, but overall, what are your initial thoughts?
I actually really love the opening, aside from the canary. One of the big things that I loved about it is that it really captured the aesthetic of what would be between the first movie and the second one. It really, these ships look lived in, the technology looks exactly where it should be. The stuff doesn't look brand new, it looks run down as well, like it should be. So I loved it from that right off the bat. And then as you were saying, I think it was Jonathan, the way that Rain and Andy are introduced and set up as our protagonists, a team, a brother and sister team, one of three, which is interesting, and that we'll get to. Um, and it sets them up so well that, like you said, by the time we get to the next part of the story, we're with them already. And so these other characters, and yeah, some of them stick a little more than others, and I'm on board with everyone else. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I think that that opening section of the film brilliantly sets up when they get it brilliantly sets up what's to follow. Yeah, I love the opening.
We
And
didn't talk about, if you don't mind, we didn't talk about the opening. Like I was curious
Mhm.
about everybody's thoughts on, and maybe everybody was cool with it because we didn't talk about it, but like the like tying it directly into Alien, retrieving the body and pulling it back, and if everybody's like, yeah, that makes sense, like cocoon.
It it absolutely did. I mean, for me, it did. It was like of course, this is what Wayland Yutani would do, and I think it's a good way to leverage like filling in some gaps. Because I think there's been a lot of work done on that, like, in multiple medium. There's been graphic novels, there's been Alien Isolation that kind of gets into Ripley's daughter
That was a
in
big
between.
influence here, for sure.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think, Jonathan, I was getting a lot of hints of the Alien tabletop RPG in terms of some of the set pieces we were seeing here. Like some of this was like right out of some of the game set pieces that we've played, that again is filling in the gaps with elements of Prometheus, Alien Covenant, and the Xenomorph, like the Alien proper movies.
That's a really good
Um,
call out. Is that I think probably the tabletop was the best representation I've seen of that since this in trying to merge those storylines.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that them playing with the idea that um, even with, because you find out later that even with everything that Ripley did, she still didn't kill that first xenomorph, blowing
Mm.
it out into space. They bring up a point later where it's just like, as it turns out, like, eating and breathing aren't really a big deal for
Yeah.
xenomorphs. So it was able to survive. And obviously and this kind of carries into when they do get their way up to the space station, which is divided into two parts. There's Romulus on one side and Remus on the other. Um, it's there's a reason it's a ghost ship, obviously, and they start to play with the idea of like the things that we know what to expect as an audience. You start seeing the hole that's burned through. You see the half an android body in one of the rooms. You start to see where they're keeping the samples. And I think there is, again, because I think Alvarez is going for that suspense from the original. This isn't meant to be as much of an actioner like Aliens and James Cameron version was. So he spends some time building that suspense again. I'm glad. I don't think he takes as long as Scott does in the original. Ridley Scott in the original, in that like he it doesn't draw out quite as long, but you still get some of those references. I don't. I think one of the best things that Alvarez does is build the tension. So, how does everybody like how they kind of like build up when they're first searching around on Romulus? Scott, why don't you kick us off here?
It's good. That's what I was leading into before I pumped the brakes before. I think leading into the Romulus and the stuff on the Romulus is also really good. And again, it's, as you said, he's ratcheting up this tension. I may disagree with you down the line a little bit, just in terms of I think it's very much across. It very much has aliens DNA in it, to the extent that I think it's paced like Aliens, but it plays like a slasher, which was kind of the vibe that I was getting, because it's once they hit the Romulus and things start to happen, it's just go 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 from there. But again, it's not like some PSA for the Marines or something like that. It's
Yeah.
people way out of their element, trying to survive. And what's great this time around, I guess, as a viewer, is we know more than they do, right? This is we're not learning. We learn a few new things, but we as the audience know a lot of the mythology that they're being bombarded with throughout this movie. It's a movie of very overt, how would you say, tributes to, and then there's stuff that's more subtle, but it's definitely all there. And I just think this section, again, I'm loving section one, and I'm loving this section when they get to Romulus and the shit hits the fan. Absolutely.
Derek, your
Ooh,
thoughts
me,
on
me, me.
like how do you think that how good are they at kind of like building that tension?
I thought I really liked that part. I think that was one of my favorite parts, is the buildup, because it's gonna happen. Like that first, I mean, and they really squeeze like every last bit of juice out of that anticipation, just with the way that they're structuring the whole Romulus space station, and how they have the frozen face huggers, so you literally are like, oh man, in like 20 seconds, like this is gonna be nuts. So I really love that part of it. I love how they incorporated water as well, which also I mean, I'm not saying this just because of your backdrop, but I was reminded of Alien Resurrection with the way that they were. I won't go, I guess, too far ahead here, but just the whole, especially the water part, because I thought of like, okay, the Resurrection did water really well, and face huggers and water is super creepy. And so yeah,
Your
it gave
Honor,
me
he
some.
went right to the end.
But I think it was so much fun though to just watch them explore, and the set design and the practical effects that they really lean into, and the aesthetics of, like you mentioned, Scott, like trying to build that world between Alien and Aliens. I thought it was just like such a great playground for them to show all of those elements. And I also thought that was a really good. They were still able to sneak in some character development too, like with David Johnson as Andy, kind of his interactions when we kind of see him away from Rain for the first time, with well, I guess second time because of those damn kids on the mining planet, but but we see his interactions with Bajorn and Tyler as well, and we kind of learn a little bit about why Bajorn doesn't like androids and things like that. So there is a little bit of character stuff in there, but
Now,
not that I'm sticking up for Bajorn.
No, Derek, I got to stop you. For as Nordic as Nordic as you look, you have to
Minnesota
know
guy. Minnesota guy.
that BJORN is not Bjorn, it's Bjorn.
Bjorn. Oh, I thought it was a heavy J. I thought
No,
Heavy
it's a soft
Oh,
J, my
God.
friend, not a hard J. It's Bjorn.
Bjorn.
Heavy J.
Next thing you're gonna tell me so is like DiGiorno's, not is it Diorno's? Like
Yes, it is. Yep.
I know it's a
And
G
the
and a J,
Corpse
but
Club is back, baby. There's the first t-shirt. Heavy J.
Heavy
oh
J.
my gosh. Well,
I
at
thought
least
it
I
was
didn't
a
give away the
heavy
plot of the
J.
movie. That's
I do also want to, like, obviously I'm quick to pounce, but I do feel like it is important to note, like, you could see Derek's face turning red, trying not to just say everything. So he showed some really good
He
restraint.
did.
Thank
He
you.
did.
Thank you.
yes, it's
Golf clap.
Restraint.
Golf
hot
clap.
in here. Yes, thank you. But yes, so in summary, I did enjoy the exploration element of it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Bjorn
Tamika.
and friends.
Let me compose myself. Oh my god.
Sure.
I thought honestly, I thought Derek was kidding. Like I was like, oh, it's just a joke.
The best thing to me was watching Brian's head explode. Almost. I'm like, he's gonna blow. He's gonna blow.
I was trying to remember, how did Brian say this name? I'm just trying to think.
It's okay. It's okay. Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
I should have just called him the cousin, because they did allude several times that he was a
Oh my
cousin
God.
in that family. So I should have just called him like Cuz or something. But
Oh, hurtful. A Texas
So anyway,
Chainsaw
we're at the
Massacre thing.
Romulus. What's next, Brian?
I'm still trying to get
Yes.
Tamika's input, Scott. Could you not?
Yeah, and I haven't spoken yet.
Yes, Scotty Poo, hurtful.
I didn't know we were on
Jeez.
the new. I was answering the first question.
We're still trying, and it was Derek.
Yeah,
that
I'm
sucked
trying to
all
let
all the air out of the room.
I thought you guys had gone.
It was his Bjorn bullshit. No. Tamika and Jonathan haven't gotten to answer this one yet.
My apologies.
Okay. No, I've realized about myself that a movie has maybe like 20 or 30 seconds to kind of suck me in and kind of like tell me what to expect. Like like what kind of vibe am I supposed to be riding with here? I think Fede Alvarez always does a good job with that. Like he's so good at like setting the stage and like kind of telling you, okay, this is what this movie is, like this is the vibe, like this is the suspense, the tension, I'm gonna like ease you into it, which a lot of the alien movies do that. Like they do, okay, let me not pull a Derek. Fire hose.
Easy.
Easy. Out something later on. But yeah, no, I love, I'm not gonna feel this way towards the end. But in the beginning, I was sucked in. I was locked in. And I just hoped that no one would stick a face in an egg that's opening. No one like looks into anything. If we could do that, I'm in it. I'm so in it. Like but I think he does a really good job of that anyway. Like the Evil Dead remake, I liked the way that movie starts. And
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Jonathan,
I think I'm going to stay there.
Sorry.
No.
You stay here. You stay here? Cool.
Yeah.
So we got from Wicked Kitten about Alien in the water is the best part of Resurrection. I agree. It is one of the best, if not the best.
And you're talking about the movie as a whole when you say that?
I'm not talking about I'm not going to comment on the entire movie. And we have the Kilt Thief, who mentioned that I don't think there was a single egg shown in the film.
That's a good point. It's all like
do agree because it was genetically reproduced based on the xeno that they caught outside of the Nostromo. So that is correct.
They were
as far as we know,
vacuum sealed. Face huggers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they were sort of like the ones David had in Covenant by the end of it, even though it wasn't exactly the same. In case anyone was like, no, they weren't this. I know they weren't. I'm just saying they were kind of laid out in a similar way. I know.
So really, David was behind it all.
Well, I thought the interesting things about the beginning, I mean, I really like that they continued to build the Andy relationship. One of the things that I'll argue is I think that, there's a lot of speculation from me you're going to hear through the rest of this podcast, but I think Andy was probably in earlier drafts speculating that he was the primary character. They spent a lot of time building him up. We have him that's kind of being betrayed by Rain, find out that they're going to leave him. He's getting picked on. To me, he's the most interesting character of the movie, and we'll continue to talk about that. I think that, one of the reasons I judge this movie maybe a little harsher, having nothing to do with the Alien movies, because, they've all been problematic for decades, in one way or another. But I think that Fede Alvarez is so good at tension, and so good at gore, and so good at building things that, like, I thought he was going to knock it out of the park. And so we clearly, what I see is, like, with this intro, we're talking about I think, Bryan, you mentioned that, people know what's going to happen, but maybe a third, maybe more, have probably never seen Alien or Aliens. And so we are dealing with this world where, like, this is a Disney movie now. And so my argument is that when I watch this movie, this doesn't feel like a cohesive movie. And you've heard, in interviews with Fede saying that, he got feedback from Ridley Scott, he got feedback from James Cameron, I'm sure he got notes from Disney. And so I can imagine maybe what he would have made if he didn't have any of those notes. And I can see what appears to be pieces of that. And then I see what sounds like mixing all that input together and trying to make a movie that works. And I mean, this was like hugely, hugely successful. But I feel like, some of the things we see at the start of the film feel like they were less touched. That first act, and why I was, like Tamika mentioned, I was all in, is because to me, that feels like probably what was most original, most polished. I think as we continue to go, things feel like a little bit more of too many cooks in the kitchen.
And I think that's a good way to carry into, for me, once things go, and I think our discussion about this is kind of like, Alvarez is just kind of, for me, going on a series of set pieces. At this point, he has kind of set up the basic premise. He has gotten the ball rolling as I think the kind of catalyst is when they go into the room where they're looking for the fuel to be able to, because they find the cryo chambers, but they realize they don't have enough fuel to get the 9-year trip that it's going to take to get to the next system. So they go looking for fuel, which happens to be in the same room where the facehuggers are. And I think that's where the shit really starts hitting the fan. And I think from there, yeah, it's I don't want to say fully like fan service, but I do think there is just a lot of like, okay, this is just going to be a roller coaster ride for the rest of it, which honestly I think is a lot of what Fede Alvarez does quite a bit. So I think that's why, like, this is kind of what I saw coming. I did enjoy it, but I kind of want to just go around the horn and talk about things that leapt out for each one of you, either in a good way or maybe not a great way. I want to start with one that I think is a really mixed bag, and I lean a little bit not great on, and that is the return, quote unquote, of Ian Holm, as in this one, Rook. And so, for fans of the original, Ian Holm played Ash. He is the synthetic who basically he doesn't even really go rogue. He just goes with what Weyland-Yutani wants him to do, and that leaves everybody else on the ship expendable. You get a similar vibe from Rook, who is played by a digital depiction of Ian Holm. At this point, he's this version of Rook is kind of like what happened to Bishop in Alien 3. There's only half of him, but since he's synthetic, he can still operate, and he's basically trying to like pull the strings for Weyland-Yutani because of the at this point, as is always the case with Weyland-Yutani, they want their material, they want their xenomorph material. You get more of a peek behind the curtain here on what they're trying to do with it, with the what is it even called? I forget what it's Plagiaris prepotens. I'm sure I butchered that. But essentially, this is the stuff they're trying to distill from xenomorphs that is supposed to kind of enhance human beings as a whole. Which again we'll come back later. But just the I have issue with them using Ian Holmes' likeness. I know that Fede Alvarez and Jonathan, I think you said that Ridley Scott had a big part in going to Holmes' estate and getting their permission. For me, that isn't the same thing as getting the consent of the person you're actually doing the likeness for. And you know, the estate and his family can guess what he would have wanted, but I also don't know, you know, I don't want to question their motivations, but like uh, who knows how much of that, like who knows what kind of a check was held up in front of them to say that, you know, this is a good idea. I don't know. That's all speculation on my point or on my part. But yeah, for me, it was a little icky to see a digital depiction of someone who had died in 2018. But I also know like this isn't the first time this stuff has happened. I think Star Wars did it with why am I blanking on
Peter
his name?
Cushing.
Hammer.
Peter Cushing,
Cushing.
and
Yeah.
Tarkin. I think the
Yeah.
interesting thing about this, though, is that the Peter Cushing and Tarkin one, regardless of how you feel about like the kind of the moral side or the ethical side of that, is like from a story perspective, that character is running around. And so it makes this one even more of an unusual choice because this was completely unnecessary. I would actually argue that if Rook had been another character and maybe a well-known like hero character, we would have sympathized with Rook and we wouldn't have known from the very beginning that Rook is going to start causing problems. And I think that would have played interesting. Of course, like I mentioned before, so not to invalidate that, there's a lot of people who probably, you know, saw that and either didn't know it was CG or they didn't know that the original character, so they didn't have that tie back. But we got to remember that, like I said, at least more than half had seen the original Alien. They knew that character, and we knew where things were going.
Okay, I'll say that it's if people don't recognize that character, that's one thing. If you didn't recognize that was CG, then you weren't looking very closely.
Here's the interesting thing I've seen though is that like they had asked folks, and I had seen anecdotal stuff online too for some of the Star Wars ones, and they didn't know that Tarkin. They didn't know.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't know. And this is why sometimes we think about like that this stuff's very obvious to everyone. It's very obvious on social media or within circles of people who love film. But for people who don't, it's not they don't know the, you know, ethical discussions that are being had. In some cases, they don't realize it. Again, remember in some cases, like an 18-year-old who's going to watch this has never seen Alien and doesn't care whether it's a CG character or not. But I'm just saying, like, we didn't need it. And also, like, we got by an Alien with, like, one of the worst looking mannequins for Ash. So, like, honestly, in, like, paying tribute to that, they should have kept just a pretty nasty looking version of Ian Holm and not even done it CG, because it actually kind of would have, it kind of would have paid tribute to it a little bit more. So I just think it was kind of like bad decision on top of bad decision on top of bad decision. I don't think it needed to happen at all. And I think, I don't know about anybody here, but for me, I don't see all this fan service and be like, oh, like that's great. Like the stuff in Star Wars Force Awakens, like all that, I didn't need that. I don't need the fan service piece. But
the fan service. I mean, if that is that the segment of this show right now.
I mean,
let's
get this out of the way.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Oh, hold on. Wait, sorry. I do want to pause 1 second because we do have comments from our chat. We have,
we got Heavy J clipped. So
yeah,
Bajorn is now
so Heavy J is clipped. So thank you, Wicked Kitten. We have the Kilt Thief who said, kind of makes you wonder if there was only a finite number of aliens that could be produced from Romulus. If there was no queen or eggs. I think that's totally possible, is that there was only, you know, like, again, like if you can only, like when they do those like true crime things, like we only had so much DNA, we can only run it so many times. So like that is totally possible. They only had a finite amount of material to work with. And then Wicked Kitten mentions that we need to teach these kids about Alien. It's a moral imperative. I wholeheartedly agree. I think the good thing about this, though, is this movie is popular. This movie is getting more people, and again, so we're gonna complain about this movie and love this movie, and for some of us at the same time. But like, this is getting new people. I saw other comments from people that like, I loved Romulus. I had a conversation the other day in person where I saw Romulus. Somebody saw Romulus for the first time, had never seen any of the other movies, and then went back and started watching 1, 2, 3, and going there.
Nice.
So like, it is cool that people are so excited about Alien. I don't want to take that away, right? If you hear us and we're picking on this, it's because we love it, because we want things to be, as good as they can be. And so for me anyway, it's coming from a place of love. But I think there's also like a big positive for this movie.
All right,
and part
having
of me-
said that,
Yeah,
Part of me
having
wants
said
to get
that,
this-
turn it-
I do. Part of me wants to get some of this fan service and the things that for me were a little wonky out of the way, because there's a lot of good stuff that I want to talk about. But yeah, and I think there's a crossover, like there's a segue here too, because Rook is guilty of one of the blatant fan service moments where he gives them the whole,
no, I agree.
You know, I don't like your chances, but for what it's worth, you have my sympathies.
Yeah.
That at least makes a little sense, because it's like,
no,
they're the same kind of android.
It would be
So-
stock in the data banks.
Yeah, or
I
like
actually
that's kinda
I didn't like it, but I could explain it.
There are other ones there's one that's way more egregious. And Scott, I'm going to let you. I can tell you want to run with the ball on this one. So
is that when
have at it.
Andy with the flamethrower says, "Get off her, you bitch"? Is that the moment?
It was not good. It was not.
Oh,
good.
it was terrible. It was terrible. And Brian, you and I were talking about this. I mean, it's happening between 1 and 2, but he's spouting a line.
Ripley hasn't said it yet.
The line from Ripley. Yeah, she
You do-
steals it from Ripley.
It could have been from Ripley's favorite TV show. You don't know this. Maybe this is a well-known phrase. Maybe there's a catchphrase that everybody uses.
Oh yeah, it's going to wind up being like RoboCop
on NBC,
like,
Xenomorph and Sons.
Yeah.
It's going to be in RoboCop where they like cut away to different like commercials and like things on the TV. It's like, next on, get away from her, you bitch.
Yeah, she used it because it was a popular phrase at the time. You don't know.
Next on, Xenomorph and the Maiden. Yeah.
It's like if Randy had said it in Scream 2, but it was before like aliens had come out.
So, and honestly, it's that stuff that really only bothers me about the movie, because this movie checked off like a lot of really good boxes for me as a rootin' tootin' rock'em sock'em. Practical effects, a lot of nicely done.
And
very nicely done.
We're complaining about the
Thank you.
CG, but it was such
The
beautiful practical work.
Effects are fantastic. So the
Alec
fan
Gillis,
service stuff, it's you know what it is. It's not even anger, of course. Obviously, like I got more shit to be angry about. It's frustration as a viewer, because I'm really enjoying the movie, and what those moments do is they just take me out of it, and I'm thinking, was that for me? I don't want to see. I don't want to see.
I don't know who. I honestly don't know who it's for. I don't know who it's for, because people who are new have no idea it's a reference.
Yeah.
And people who love the original movies don't want the reference. They want new material.
No. Yeah.
That kind of feels like notes, from someone like, we need to make this seem more like it. I'm thinking like executives or
I agree.
Because I don't see like James Cameron being like, you know what, this is missing the most famous line from my movie. Put it in your like. I don't think but it does feel like, well, how can we, make this more alien-y, just like that mindset. That's
like
where it
we're
feels
there.
like it's coming.
I'm there already. I know it's an alien movie. I don't need fucking reminders.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's in the fucking title.
It's in the title.
We
People
just
even
earned our
say it
E.
a few times.
No.
I forgot we're publishing these again. We got to start. We only get one F-bomb per episode.
Oh,
No,
nice.
that's actually not a true story. I
it's not?
only had us restrict the F-bomb so that we didn't get explicit, but when we swear a lot, it just gets a little E next to it.
Well, that's what I mean. We're trying to avoid the E if we can.
Yeah.
E is for
everyone.
excellent.
E is for effort.
All right, so we've got.
Well, is it okay if I don't mean to
That's
like
closer to the
rewind
truth.
back to
Yeah,
a thing that we
do
already
it. What do you
like,
got? Yeah.
Rewind.
I don't,
What?
I don't mean to rewind. But I do have like a legit question because I didn't really mind the Rook thing so much because, okay, not to bring up Prometheus.
No,
No,
Prometheus is not a
that's
bad word
very
I
Okay.
like
in this
Prometheus.
chat box over here, this video box.
Okay. Okay. But I mean, there's two Davids. So I guess and I could be wrong, but I just took it as like he's just okay. I can't even now after listening to everyone else, I
No,
can't
I think you
even.
raise a good point, Tamika. I'm not against the use of the character and the
Mhm.
idea that you would see the same face. My only issue is the more behind the scenes stuff of actually using Ian Holm's face for that when
Fair.
he didn't have the
Okay.
opportunity to give consent for it.
Fair.
But it makes perfect sense within the concept of the but like what Jonathan said, like within the context of not having Ian home to give his consent, there was a lot of ways they could
Yeah.
have gotten around it.
It's like super
And
But
it would
as a
have
slapstick.
actually
general,
benefited the movie, I think, to have it be another character.
Yeah.
I also think as well, though, and I could be wrong, but my assumption by the fact that the crew of the Nostromo did not look at Ash and be like, "Hey, you're an android model," that he was like an undercover android, so that he was a
Mhm.
unique model, as opposed to the Bishop model, which,
Oh,
as we've seen in multiple movies now, like it's more of a
Yeah.
standard. And the
yeah.
David unit was also like a standard that people had seen.
Okay,
It's
fair.
interesting that David gets a non-chess name, whereas our
Oh.
Rook and our Bishop, right,
well, I
have
mean,
chess
Ash
Oh,
names.
didn't have one either.
I was,
Honestly, that was another weird fan servicey thing that didn't make sense because it was like
What's that? Which
you're
one?
All right.
calling him Rook is connecting him to Bishop, but he's not connected to Bishop. He's
I
connected to
know.
Ash, who
I'm,
doesn't have a chess piece name.
yeah. Oh, that's actually, yeah, that is actually true.
That
I was
is
like,
shouldn't
yeah.
have been like if
Oh, my
yeah.
brain
Like it's
hurts.
fan service. It doesn't make a lick of sense. I think that's where it's like, what? None
okay.
of this makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, fair. Okay, fair.
All right. So I think that's kind of like the notes or the issues we were going to have. Tamika, why don't you kick off? Was there anything you like, any set pieces or anything that you liked in particular about once things kind of like hit the ground running?
I the alien like it's just something about something like getting into you, like in your orifices somehow, and then like popping, like getting into your chest and popping out of your chest that like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. That will get
Mhm.
me every time. And like it was just so cool, like the way that they show, I guess like when that okay in Alien, right, like you have to kind of come in close contact with the face hugger and then it just kind of hops on you, but these face huggers, I mean, they're like launching themselves. They can like it's almost like they can like hop or something.
Mhm.
Like balance themselves and just like launch themselves at you.
I
And
was gonna say they're like lobsters, but
yes,
lobsters don't do that. So
My
they
lobsters
don't, but
do.
I know what you were. I get what you meant by that. But yeah, I was just so freaked. That kind of stuff. It just makes me even now, just talking about it, just makes me itch. Like it's like, oh God, oh, ow, now. I'm like putting my hand up to my face. I'm like, oh no, oh God, this is gonna get bad. I just
I
like I
also
freak out just from like the sounds that I'm hearing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like panic sweating. I'm
I
not gonna
also
lie.
really appreciate that they bring in like they give it's much more kind of up close and personal with like
Yeah.
showing the
Mhm.
proboscis thing going down
Yes,
people's
and then it
throats.
goes
Like,
in.
Mm,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
oh
And like when they're
man.
taking it out and it's like bleh, it's like
Oh,
slithered its way. It's so icky. It's so gross.
it's
I
so
Um
also do
yeah.
want to say that going back to the practical for a minute, and I'll keep mentioning it, but
yeah,
when
yeah.
you
yeah,
what
absolutely.
they had in Covenant, one of the areas where they missed was they had some pretty great looking, at least behind the scenes, practical effects, and they scrubbed it with CG, and then they had
Yeah.
some entirely CG scenes, and you weren't scared of what you were looking at because it looks more like a cartoon. Whereas you can see just how much scarier these face huggers are when, and if you saw the behind the scenes, they're remote controlled. And, yes, they're CG enhanced as well, but they found this perfect balance of, because it's a lot of physical stuff, because the goo is real in many of the scenes, it makes it that much more terrifying. I mean, I think they really nailed it.
And I will
Yes,
also
good
say
job.
that, like, for as like pulled back as it was from like the grandeur of aliens in terms of like the sheer numbers, I think the face huggers is the one area where they went all in on, like, when they're running from the horde of face huggers down the
Yeah.
hallway, especially in the lead up to it, where they're just like, well, if we get the room the same temperature, they won't be able to. They're kind of going like the predator route a little bit,
Yeah.
like they can't see our heat signature. That was such
That
a suspenseful scene. It was so well done.
You know, it funnily enough, that reminded me, that scene, especially the hallway when they're all coming after them. Two movies. One, Infested, which just came out this year with the
Yeah.
spiders. Which that director, he's going to do an Evil Dead movie, so there's kind of like a connection there, with Fede and everything. But also Lost in Space, 1998.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
kept
you're
thinking of
right.
Matt LeBlanc like shooting all the
Yeah.
spiders as they're going down the hallway. So that was, I don't know if that was an intentional homage to the 98 Lost in Space, but that was like what immediately came to my mind, because that really freaked me out watching that as a
Well, I
kid.
thought
So
Rook's face was like a tribute to Gary Oldman as the giant spider monster.
Oh man. All right.
and maybe it
Derek,
was.
any big standouts for you in either direction?
It really, it was effective. I mean, obviously, yeah, the some things bothered me about, like touching on the Ian Holm, the technology, and bringing him in, and him not, being around to sign off on that personally, especially because I know, like, it always seemed like Ian Holm was the one who was a little more distant from the Alien movie than his co-stars, and so like it felt like, man, like, I don't, I really, and I feel like he came, and a little more speculation too. It feels like he came around towards that a little more in his later years, but it does feel like, of all the people, like, I don't know if he might be the most reluctant to have, been incorporated in this part of it. But on a visceral level, though, definitely, like, I think that's Fede's strength, and like I said, the invasiveness of the face huggers. I feel like they really leaned on the face huggers more than just one scene. It was like, it kind of felt like a spider horror movie for like 2/3 of the movie, which I thought was smart, because I've always thought that's like the creepiest part of it. So the fact that they really lean into that, I liked that. And it kind of reminded me, we got a little bit of like the bouncy face huggers in the first AVP movie, where like we see them wipe out a whole room in like a matter of seconds, but
Yeah.
then they're like not in the movie for for the rest of the time. But so yeah, that, I think the invasiveness, and then just some of the I guess the invasiveness of like the X-ray, seeing like being able to see. I don't know how, like, if I should go too far down the road yet plot wise, but there's just certain elements that really
we're
creep
No, we're
me
good.
out. So
We're
yeah, we're in
we're
there.
in it.
We're in it now.
we're in there.
And everything but the end, Derek, is all I ask.
Ooh, okay,
Anything is fair
well,
game.
in that case, no. But no, there were, and so I just like, as of this recording, I just saw this movie like hours ago, in a theater by myself, like, like a 12:40 screening, and
No
so there were
pants.
moments where I was like talking out loud, like, "Whoa, that was like," because I always know Fede is gonna like try to get under your skin, like he doesn't shy away from like pulling back. He does these zoom ins, and like you mentioned, Tamika, with like the face huggers and that, just trying, like, really going for the mouth. That part really creeped me out. But yeah, just the I guess the, like, again, I don't want to give away too much of the ending, but just certain things that happen with I feel like some characters go through the ringer more than others, which serves the plot, but is also like, oh man, that's a tough road to go down.
In terms of characters going through the ringer, I did appreciate that with Andy. Like, I honestly don't know if I could have handled what is essentially Lemmy from Of Mice and Men being plugged into a xenomorph battle for an entire movie. That would have just been like, this is too much. So I did like that they have that pivot where he gets that upgrade, and then it kind of turns into like, oh, he's a lot more capable, but we also don't know, to what degree we
I
can
thought
trust
that was
him.
incredibly clever. I thought that
Yes,
was,
right.
yeah, was not expecting that at all. And again, I think like Andy is where like this movie really excels.
Yeah, it's the heart of the movie. He's the heart of the movie.
Yeah.
You're probably right, Jonathan. Maybe we were doing things from the androids' perspective, but that would have just been, of course, that would have been too. You can't do that. No one's going to fall for that. Blah blah blah. So Andy has a sister, but coming from that, you also have two other sets of families that are going on this trip. But that's neither here nor there, and I don't know what that means. But this is what I wanted to say. This is exactly the movie that I thought Fede Alvarez was going to make, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. It moves like a son of a bitch. It's very visceral, which in the best alien moments are like cathartic. Um, and did I mention it moves like a motherfucker? It's the details in between, that fan service stuff. Yeah, I don't like that, but I mean, I'm not going back to the theater to see it, but I'm I'm very eager to see it, watch it again at home, just to see a little bit more of the mechanism at work in connecting these two, because I think I got distracted by the stuff that frustrated me, and I was missing some of the stuff that he was actually doing really, really well. Not to the point where I actually really enjoyed the movie, watching it. I think I got distracted away from some of the really brilliant ways that he tied, the two together. So I guess probably this biggest standout was, being right that Fede Alvarez is a badass. So
I'm going to pass it to you, Jonathan, but I do also want to put it out to the chat. What were some highlights for you for the movie? Any set pieces or characters or particular sequences that really stood out for you? Wicked Kitten did bring up, funny how much of the things we don't like about it are the things that were regurgitated portions. Yeah, because they just seemed very unnecessary. I very much agree. Jonathan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is even a controversial statement. I think what they did with the xenomorph and the practical effects, it's the best looking xenomorph since the first movie. Because they were making many of them and there were kind of challenges in the suits and things like that in Aliens, they had to hide them a little bit. Queen's great. I love Alien 3. I love the work that ADI did on that alien. But I think what they were able to do with this xenomorph in terms of, it's been decades later. So in some cases, the same teams came back to work on this. So again, it's not they're building off of this work. But what it resulted in is, I think, just an incredible amount of detail in building upon Giger's design, which was hard to even pull off in the 70s because there were limitations. They have new ways of building, whether it's animatronics or the suits. There was a guy in a suit for a good bit of this as well, who's credited in the film, and I was following him on Instagram because he could finally tell people about it, and so I think that's cool. And and he looks up to people who had played the alien before, like Doug Jones. He had met him, and so to see him get really excited for it and be a part of this history, I think was really cool. But yeah, I think
Trevor
that's one
Newland,
of the
I believe the guy's name is.
yes, that's him. And so yeah, so I mean, I think it's one of the best looking Xenos. They were able to do the kind of the translucent dome. We get a lot of movement from them. We got obviously the one with the cracked dome, where they just, like I said, there was a lot of creativity. I would also say that because the Alien movies always kind of build upon the mythology. I really liked that Fede filled the gap where we never really see what happens from the chest burster to the like full size thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so he built that cocoon. And I haven't been online as much, so I don't know if a lot of people are just talking about it and see it, but I do think one of the coolest things was to show that cocoon and it kind of growing out of it. I thought it was incredibly like in the spirit of H.R. Giger in terms of something that was, creepy but also sexual. And I thought that, to be able to, kind of add these pieces and build upon the mythology in this way, I thought was pretty cool. I mean, we see that, we see obviously, we see what he was able to do with the Facehugger. We'll talk about the finale, but I think that he was incredibly successful with the practical effects.
A small detail, but one that I think he really explores in terms of kind of the lore of it and using it to really good effect is the acid blood in this one, in
Mm.
really showing what a threat it is, because I think that was always something that was a little bit lacking in Aliens. It came up in Alien Resurrection, where when people get hit with acid, it always looks like a very superficial like injury, like it just
Yeah.
hurts the skin. And they're really clear about the fact, like, no, this is burning all the way through you if it lands on you. Like, this is
Yeah.
not just going to mess your face up, it's probably going to kill you, and enough, and
Mm.
just a couple of drops are enough to do it. And you see that happen with Bjorn.
Heavy J, let's go.
Hashtag heavy
Who
J.
knows? That could be his nickname. We just didn't know it.
No,
And
it's yours
so
now. It's
what
your heavy
what
J.
Alvarez what Alvarez does so well as a director is that pays off, because when you see how damaging it is, the scene then when they go through the anti-grav
Mhm.
segment, where they just they shoot a bunch of these xenomorphs into just puddles of acid, and then they have to travel through that was such a well shot scene and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
suspenseful, because it's just you're pretty sure Rain is going to get through it okay, but like they do a good job at making, like, Andy is always kind of that, like, is this where he gets sacrificed for the betterment of Rain? And even though he is a synthetic, that's still going to look pretty gnarly if he
Yeah.
winds up going through like this floating puddle of acid. So I think actually one of my favorite things about the movie was I know this sounds ridiculous, but the proper respect that they paid to the acid blood, and really showing like what a danger it is.
The zero
Mhm.
G acid was one of the best scenes in the franchise, like bar none.
Absolutely.
Like it's great. There are things in this that make the movie. It was, Scott was. I think Scott, you mentioned like that these things weren't like too distracting for you. Like
Yeah,
some of these
yeah.
fan service things took me out of the movie so much
That's
that like
exactly.
I need to see it again. I was talking to Brian, and I talked to others. I'm like, I just need to go see it again. Like I
Yeah.
actually think I mean. I was entertained. I liked it better than I didn't, but I think I will like it much more second time around, knowing what's going to happen, and kind of not being taken out by some of this stuff.
Yeah, and
I
I
Exactly.
love
definitely.
the
Oh,
acid
good.
too. Just a quick note on that. It felt like that was Fetty doing a good job of kind of like it's one of those things that would get brought up in debates about the movie. Well, if it's so like harmful, wouldn't it just go through the ship? And it's like, so he kind of addressed that head on and like really incorporated the fragility of the ship. Like, and then like, they have these badass the pulse guns that the Colonial Marines use, and he's like, well, that's great, but if you shoot these in the wrong area, like we'll all just die anyway. So they tried to like incorporate some. It felt like they were trying to make it a little more like grounded or scientific, because they're almost like, well, if someone says, well, why, like if this is the rules of our world, let's really like play by those rules. So I kind of liked how they did that, and they're trying to almost like stay one step ahead of like all the different things that could go wrong.
Yeah, you basically can't shoot it if you're in space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What and I think intentional, but the acid blood was very semeny floating around.
Mhm.
And I think that was intentional because there's always been a lot of sexual phallic imagery in the Alien with Giger,
Yeah.
It's all there. And so I think this might just be another, another little funny addition to that whole scenario. But I could be wrong.
Scott, I do need to say, if that's what your semen looks like, you might want to go to see a doctor, buddy.
There's golden.
Mm.
Yeah, it's acidic, but it looks nice.
Oh, all right.
You
We
know,
are gonna get that E now.
Brian, you knew where this was going as soon as
Yeah.
as soon as
Well,
you,
I wasn't taking it there. He's the one.
no,
who's
I
like-
agree. This is a Brian problem. He could have just let you stop there.
This is why you don't let me host. So yeah, like they do a really good job, I think, at kind of like respecting the lore, bringing the lore together, because they again are bringing in the elements of Prometheus and Alien Covenant without like shoving a lot of the stuff that didn't work about those two movies like down our throats. And so like that the one other kind of like tie-in is that again they're trying to and Rook is trying to push for this substance that will like push humans into the next evolution of kind of like their existence. And so and it works out because Kay, she's pregnant, she is very badly wounded by one of the xenomorphs, but in like a gamble she injects herself with it, and like it works out because they all get to the end and they all get in their cryopods. And then at that point I needed to go to the bathroom. So did anything else happen in the
No,
movie?
that was it.
Nope.
No.
Roll
No.
credits.
Derek, nothing.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Nothing else happened.
Nope.
The
Just the
look on
credits.
Jonathan's face
That
right
was-
now.
You cannot accurately capture unless you had, I guess the security cameras at the theater. I would pay them to see it. When I watch this movie and I'm like, they're really doing Alien Resurrection. Like one of the most controversial and argued about segments, and that's how they decided to end it. I was floored. I was floored that we went Alien Resurrection route with it. Of all the references that you could pick, and then the other thing that was going in my mind at the same time was I cannot wait to talk to you all about this, because when you watch it, especially you, Brian, you're gonna be like, what?
Oh, I was so happy, Jonathan. You have no idea. Like, I was within the context of like if this was in a vacuum and it was just like me being an Aliens fan and seeing this, I'd be like, why the hell are they doing this again? Within the context of knowing what the experience must have been like for you, I was literally laughing in the back of the movie theater. Like I was the glee and the joy bursting forth from me when I realized what they were doing, because I'm just picturing you at the at your movie theater, just like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
That was exactly it. Because when I have the biggest trouble I have with a movie is like if a movie's bad all the way, then it's like it's fine. It's just like, okay, well, I don't have to talk about that movie anymore. It's so tough when it's a movie that like is running at like an 8 or a 9 throughout most of it, or throughout, and then just drops. And so I'm gonna try to keep this succinct. I have many challenges with this. I think that the movie probably originally did just end where they leave the Romulus. It makes sense. It makes sense for so many reasons that like that is kind of their way to continue things. There are so many things wrong once they get on the escape ship, because you have, and I'm going to skip the like the newborn for a minute, but you have like the obvious, like then you start just copying scenes from Alien, from Rain putting the suit on, to Rain like hiding in that closet for a minute. There's like some direct scenes later as well. They're from Alien, and I just don't like Rain. What was her own character? Andy was his own character. Like I don't think we needed. Every female character doesn't have to be the Ripley prototype. It's okay that they're unique. So why we had to lean so heavily into Alien, it just felt strange to me, because again, it felt like they had to tick certain boxes. And so, and then that's where you also have like the, Ash or Rook, like, commenting again as he gets knocked out. And I'm just like, them escaping the Prometheus, like you could have ended this at about, 90 minutes, and it was still a very exciting roller coaster ride of a movie. Um, and then of course, then it's the engineer creature. And the engineer creature, I just don't, my problems with that are just that you have this xenomorph that again is like a 10 out of 10, like one of the best that we've ever seen. So you have this hero xenomorph, and then we have reintroduced the black goo. That the way the black goo works in this movie, and I'm not claiming I know how it works because it works in different ways in Prometheus and Covenant. So there are no real rules for how this black goo works. But that the way that it works is that it did not mutate the mom. Sorry, I forget her name, but it did not mutate the mom, but instead, and did not turn her into a creature, which I was expecting, because even a drop in the eye, or even a drop was enough to get Logan, I can't remember his name, in Prometheus, to turn. Like, it was very deadly. Or like breathing in like a spore was enough to start, getting the backburster. And I know that like then something came out of it. So again, like, I know there's different rules for it, but I'm surprised nothing happened to her. And instead what we ended up with is a baby that then became an engineer with like elongated arms and legs, and I know there was a lot of practical work
And
there.
then nurses her to death.
I just, again, just have a lot of questions, and I think there are different ways you could have done this, because I think what I assume everybody's trying to do here is that the original Giger designs were like translucent white. And so they were trying to redo those. I think that's what they were trying to do for Alien Resurrection, was to use that as a point of inspiration. And so I can imagine there's this inspiration of like trying to create this brand new creature and trying to do something which is like horrific and translucent. And honestly, and I'll go as talking through this because I've had nobody to talk to about this, so you can understand as I'm talking to all of you and dumping here. I've had no one to unload on. This does fit in, to the credit of how they wrote the scene, this does kind of fit in perfectly with the idea that Giger puts forth as an artist, which is like that birth and death are the same thing. It's ways of reproducing that you wouldn't expect. It's about things being born as they're being killed, being born again. So like this does fit in with that, but it just seems like it's a completely different movie. And it just seems to me like it's so close to Alien and so out of left field, and trying to like make the Prometheus and Covenant films fit in together, but we still have that huge gap with David. So I'm like, let's just address that in another film. That it feels like, to me, this did a disservice to everything they set up in the first 90 minutes. I'll stop there.
I will say the only thing that of that sequence, like, again, if I'm looking at this out of the as Wicked Kitten 13 says, out of the lens of Schadenfreude, it's not a good decision. It's not a good narrative decision. I would actually argue that I think Fede Alvarez is a much better director than he is a screenwriter. I usually have issues with his story. I think he is very good at shooting a really suspenseful movie, though. And I think the one thing this did add, the way this didn't completely just turn into a carbon copy, is I did love the sequence of watching the ships obliterate into the rings. I think that was really visually well done. I liked watching
that was very
whole
clever
sequence. Yeah. I think that was a really good way. And honestly, like, it could have been so simple of just like have it be like one last xenomorph that they like have to get rid of and have it like get dumped off that way. It did not need to be the hybrid again.
You could
but
have done
also,
two things. I'll give these away because somebody will use them. You could have done these two things, and I would have been the happiest person in the world, and I would have given this a 10 out of 10. You could have done the alien that had the kind of the crack in the dome. It could have lost the translucent dome, and we could have seen the skull like you see in the original Giger prototypes. or they could have just built the white one that he always wanted to do and just make it a little bit more between like one of the neomorphs from Covenant and a xenomorph, because they're experimenting anyway. You give me one of those two, I'm the happiest person in the world.
Oh, well, as it is, that there are ways this could have been perfect, that it was not. But I do think we are getting to a point where we'll probably start to wrap it up. I want to get final thoughts, and I want to get your grade out of 5 stars. I want to start with Tamika. Any final thoughts, anything we haven't talked about yet? And what is your final grade out of 5 for Romulus?
Oh, you guys, I mean, you and Jonathan, Brian, I mean, you were preaching. I wanted to like clap and sway. I was like, oh. Like, what else is there to add? Because they are just nailing all of my things. Like they said at the beginning of this podcast, that the first few minutes like got me. I was locked in. And I just wish that it had just kept been able to keep me locked in, because it's just silly shit starts to happen and I'm just trying to grab at anything. Like, no, 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 I was locked in. Put me back in this. Like, where's the seatbelt? Where's the seatbelt? And it's just so, I understand that maybe there's some bigger ideas and connections to other movies that, you know, he wanted to make, but maybe not for this movie, not Romulus, maybe like something else where there can be like proper fleshing out and proper attention. And I just I wanted so badly to feel at the end of this movie the way I did at the beginning. So this gives me so much anxiety rating stuff. Okay,
This is
okay,
forever.
this is out of 5, right?
Out of 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is out of
And
5.
it's forever.
Okay.
In cement.
It is forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ever.
There was so much. Okay, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 because there was way more good and way more to enjoy. I really enjoyed this movie. And not because I'm coming from like really, really bottom of the barrel expectations. It's not even that. I really did truly have so much fun. And the movie did
Nice.
have me until it didn't. So gonna give it a 3 out of 5.
All right, that's still solid. Mr.
Yeah.
Anderson, how about you?
Yes, Mr. Anderson. Well, I gotta say, one thing I want to give, I guess, mention that I'm still like wrapping my head around is apparently, as I know he's called now, Bjorn, not Bjorn, who must be like,
Yeah, he changed it, didn't you hear? Yeah, it's Bjorn.
okay. So he is, and I think this is something Fede actually confirmed, he is actually the father of Kay's child that she's pregnant with.
Yeah,
And
I think they alluded to that in the movie.
And there's like this moment where they embrace and like,
yeah.
And then, yeah, which it's so that I just like, it's a very, I guess it just adds this other layer to everything that I don't know how to really process it, but it just is something I guess I wanted to mention, that there's a lot going on here that, you know, the movie, you know, I'm not sure what that would have done to the whole dynamics of that group, but they're certainly, I guess, factors into. I know Fede actually like confirmed that on like a Reddit thread, and then he got banned for impersonating. Like,
yeah, I saw
people
that.
thought it wasn't him. So, but I would say overall, though, I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on. Maybe too much going on at certain times in this movie, a little too much fan service, but overall, I definitely enjoyed the movie quite a bit, and it gave me that, like, I don't know, it just injected the alien story with some much needed life. And because I felt a lot better walking out of this than I did when I was walking out of Alien Covenant. Like, I just felt like, okay, like I feel like it embraced some things that I really loved about the franchise. And yeah, maybe it had a little more of that like Force Awakens retread in some spots, but overall I had a lot of fun with it. So I feel like I would give it at this moment, maybe this will go up, but I would say 3.5 if we can do halvesies.
We can absolutely do halvesies.
Yes.
Hey, because it's you, Derek.
All right.
Scott.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go halvesies too. I'm gonna go 3.5 as well. And I think if the fan service stuff was gone, and I think I'm okay with the giant fella at the end. It didn't bother me all that much. Uh, really, it didn't, and I got a chuckle at the theater too, and I thought, holy shit, yeah, Jonathan's gonna lose his marbles at this. Um, but really, the issue for me that keeps the score down is that fan service that keeps tripping itself up. That, and I think if the exposition, as Jonathan had said, been just done by another synthetic to move that story along, that would have been worked, and then you could have done whatever. Whereas, what did he end up doing? Exactly what Ash did, right? So again, it's stuff like that that brings the story back. But there's so much great stuff that I'm looking forward to going back to. So you know what? Maybe I'm at a 4. Maybe I'm at a 4, and that stuff is holding it back from being higher. I'm gonna go 4.
I will say, when I was going into this movie, I really just wanted it to be like, just give me a straightforward alien movie that gives you tight sequences, a lot of good suspense, some good kills, some good gore, and try not to get too cute with it. That was all I wanted. I would say for the most part, Alvarez does that. And the area where he got too cute with it made me laugh my ass off. So I can't be too mad at him for it. So I think I'm with you, Scott. I'm at a 4. It has its issues. It is not perfect, but it was fun. Like and it's been a while since like something in the alien universe was fun. So I give it a 4. And I am going to save Jonathan for last. What
Thank
is
you.
your final rating?
I'll give final thoughts first. I will say that Ridley Scott is my favorite director. Directed my 2 favorite movies, and being that, for anyone who's asking, it's Alien and Blade Runner. But I think that the big challenge is he has big ideas, and he has not been able to team up with the right creative person, whether it be writer or director, to get his ideas across in a cohesive way. And I think that, partnering with Damon Lindelof on Prometheus, he wasn't able to get that mix right. With Too Little Alien, I think he switched the other way with Covenant, and I think he wasn't able to get that mix right. But I think what he was able to do was create this really fertile storytelling ground. I think, after Alien versus Predator, I don't think a lot of people knew what to do with the Alien. I think it was more likely we were going to get remakes. So I think that by creating these planets and these worlds and showing the engineering, giving us a glimpse of this and having this goo that can do anything, I think it's actually opened us up for a lot of storytelling. I think that's why in some cases I'm challenged a little bit, because instead of really kind of pushing everything forward, it keeps being focused. Romulus keeps being focused in the past. I think that Fede Alvarez, probably the movie he originally had in mind, my guess would have been closer to, the first 90 minutes of the movie without the ship, maybe more of a focus, like I said, on Andy, and without Ash and some of the callbacks. I think more of a tighter, probably didn't know what budget he was going to get. So my thought was like Evil Dead on a spaceship. I think that's probably where this started. Then Ridley Scott got excited. James Cameron jumped in, and Disney started saying, hey, you got to make it like this. And so I think that's where we run into problems. That being said, this movie is largely successful. I agree with the 4 out of 5, because that's what I'd give it. I think this movie maybe isn't as well, like the cinematography and the directing is not as good as Prometheus, but I think it's a better movie. It's more entertaining. Like if I have to pick which one I'd rather see, and I think about the other Alien films, like for me it's 1, 2, 3, Romulus, Prometheus, and then probably Covenant, AVP, AVPR, Resurrection at the end. You know.
But who's counting?
No.
But who's counting? And I'd rather see AVPR, hands down, easy. So anyway, but I think so I put Romulus like I said at 4. To me, I'd give it I see gas from Wicked Kitten. I didn't think that was that surprising. To me it's the worst.
No. Requiem over Resurrection is the hottest.
I would definitely rather watch it again. If they fix that lighting, they will one day. To me, it's a monster mash.
You're talking. I'm not saying it's over the shoulder basketball shot that she made in that movie.
I'm not saying it's a better movie. I'm just saying I would rather watch it. I would for AVPR. I'd rather watch it.
Requiem is the only movie I've watched but never seen.
I saw it in theaters. When you see it in theaters, you can see it a little bit more, but home video.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No. Anyway, I gotta take it back to this now that I've completely tarnished my reputation here. But 4 out of 5 for me. 4 out of 5. Well, it's not alien eggs because there's no eggs in this. 4 out of 5 facehuggers. I'm excited. I would love to see. I mean, this movie made a ton of money. So that's a good thing about it. And, universally people enjoyed it, even if they didn't love it. And a lot of people did love it. Well, at least everybody agrees that it's a step in the right direction. So I assume we're getting another one, whether Fede directs it. But even if he doesn't, what I think is really cool is we now have the prototype for how to make a better Alien movie, which is focus on your practical effects, have interesting characters, have interesting set pieces. And maybe too, some people can learn from some of the mistakes as well. Hopefully we'll keep heading in the right direction.
And we do have more Alien next year on the way in the form of Alien Earth by Noah Hawley. So there is more xenomorph action coming. So I'll be interested to see how that pans out.
I'm very curious about that.
Is that going to be xenomorph on xenomorph action? Sorry.
Well, I don't know if in that context this is going to be good or bad news, but the thing I did want to wrap up on is that this is the first time we have recorded Corpse Club in a number of months. We are not going to let that much time go by again. We are actually going to we've all agreed that we can't keep up with a 1 episode a week schedule, but we are going to start doing one of these a month, and that will be on top of the Twitch watch parties. So there will be more Corpse Club coming. This is not just a one and done. The band is in fact back together. We're just going on a little bit more of a part-time schedule. Yes, sir, Mr.
There you go, repping
representing.
The brand. Yeah.
Although that does kind of feel like the band wearing their own T-shirt at a concert. It's kind of
gives
weird.
a shit.
It's okay. And who's in our chat right now? If you are US based, even if you're UK based, shoot me a DM on Daily Dead Twitter. I'm not going to say X. Shoot me a DM on Daily Dead Twitter. I will send you a Corpse Club shirt. If you don't know.
Nice. Ooh, it's good swag, people. I mean, it may not look as good on you as me. But
how dare you?
They're a good looking shirt.
It looks even better off you, Scott.
Ooh. There
Spice.
we go. The plot thickens.
And with that, I would like to thank all of our listeners here at Corpse Club. Make sure to visit us at corpseclub.com to check out what will be our latest episode and more to come. Don't forget to review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review helps. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, if you want to get that t-shirt, you can reach us anytime at contact@corpseclub.com or on Twitter at Daily Dead News or at Corpse Club, and on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening, everybody. And until next time, stay scary.